Closed captioning of this program is made possible by the Fireman's Fund Foundation.
Public pension benefits undergo the biggest rollback in state history, while the governor continues to make his case for the November tax measure.
For 7 years.
Get ready to pay more when you shop online. The Amazon sales tax is about to kick in. And a conversation with San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee about his greatest challenges and goals for the city. Plus,
I'm Scott Schaefer. Coming up, a trip to Fremont's Little Kabul, cultural haven to a growing number of musicians and artists seeking refuge from war-torn Afghanistan.
Coming up next. Good evening, I'm Belva Davis, and welcome to This Week in Northern California. Joining me on our news panel tonight are Michelle Quinn, Silicon Valley reporter for Politico, and Josh Richmond, political reporter for Bay Area News Group. Josh, we have been away from state politics for the last couple of weeks, but now the governor is back at his desk with his pen signing bills. What are some of the things that we're going to, or have been signed?
Well, he has a tremendous number of bills to sign or veto before the end of the month. But the big news this week was clearly on Wednesday in Los Angeles, his signing of this public pension reform bill. This is something that a lot of Californians think is a long time coming. And probably just as many Californians think is still not fully addressed. Even the governor was quick to tell us this week that he does not believe that this solves all of our unfunded pension liabilities, all of our pension problems going forward. But it was the best deal he could get right now, and he did not want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. He basically said you have one side that doesn't know how to say no and another side that doesn't know how to say yes, and he's in between trying to squeeze a little bit more from each of them.
Didn't he spicily say, I just play the cards?
He plays the cards he's dealt. It was a great interview. This pension bill basically requires that public employees hired starting next year will have to work longer before they can retire with full benefits, higher retirement age. Caps benefits for the highest earners at about $132,000 in annual payout. It requires that employees eventually pay about half of the, at least half of the contribution toward their retirement plan. Local government labor unions will have a 5-year window to negotiate that through collective bargaining, but then if no deal is reached, a city or school district could force employees to pay their half of the contribution, up to 8% of pay for civil workers, 11 or 12% for public safety workers. So this is something that the unions are not at all happy about. They feel like public workers are being taken for a ride here, and they're being denied benefits that they've bargained hard to get. Conservatives and even some more moderate Californians say this doesn't go nearly far enough in that it does not address. It doesn't make enough of a dent in the shortfalls that we face over time. And the governor says he's going to be looking at pension reform again next year after he's done with his ballot measure campaign.
Was there strong Democratic support in the legislature?
Well, there was enough to get it passed. There was a lot of lobbying, a lot of hard lobbying by the public workers unions against this, and they still steadfastly oppose it.
What do you think made it possible to get passed? I mean, this has been a goal for decades.
Again, I think everybody recognized, and the governor more than anybody, that this is something that had to happen this year if he has any hope of convincing voters to pass Proposition 30 on the November ballot, which is his proposed income tax increase for the top 3% of California earners and a small sales tax increase. This ballot measure he came in and told, for which he's stumping right now, is imperative, as far as he's concerned, for school funding. There will be huge $6 billion in trigger cuts automatically already scheduled if this tax measure doesn't pass. And I think he felt, and other people felt, that he couldn't go to the public asking for this tax increase if there weren't some effort made and some success had in addressing public pension issues.
So do you think that helped him with the Democrats in the Assembly and the Senate?
I think they were willing. I think they realized that the political need to cut some sort of deal on pensions now. Now, we asked him very specifically, well, what else do you want to do on pensions next year? What is it that you didn't get now that you want to get then? And he very, in his extremely colorful way, basically said that he said, you want me to identify the hogs I'm going to take to slaughter? No, thank you. You know, he wants to keep his coalition together through November for Prop 30 before he starts trotting out the other changes he wants to make.
Well, there were a couple of things. You said something about his income tax, that he never really intended for there to be an income tax.
That's
part of
right.
this. But in addition to that, in Wisconsin, where we've heard more about the pension fight than any place else, a court today overturned the legislation that Governor Walker put forward.
That's absolutely right. A county judge in Wisconsin shot down most of the law that had effectively ended collective bargaining entirely for a lot of public workers in Wisconsin. The judge found that it violated rights of free speech and association, the Equal Protection Clause, by denying them things that non-union employees were not being denied. The governor is going to appeal that. Called the judge a liberal activist. The unions are declaring victory. This was the issue over which the governor had survived a recall vote in June, and it sort of made him a rock star in conservative circles all across the country. So it'll be interesting to see how that appeals process goes, whether other states are ever inclined to follow suit.
Well, he had 700 bills, one of them a tunnel under the Delta. The other one was high-speed rail, which he said he backs even after some doubts about it. So he had a lot of difficult decisions to make.
He had a lot of difficult decisions to make.
Well, not a difficult decision anymore for Amazon, because Amazon.com has now faced with the necessity of charging sales tax here in California. Tell us about the fight, Michelle.
Sure. This has been something that the California legislature has wanted since maybe 1992, I think, or maybe even later. So in 1992, there was a Supreme Court case, and California, I guess, started to agitate for online retailers to collect sales tax. Already, we all owe this. It's called use tax. When we buy at Amazon, we buy anywhere online, we are supposed to pay the state, but most people don't. So what many states are trying to do, and there's a federal bill as well, is to try to get the retailer at the point of sale to collect. And that's what's going to happen starting tomorrow. In California, you will go to Amazon, and if you're standing in California or sitting in California and you're going to have the product shipped to California, there will be a sales tax depending on where you are. If you're in Alameda County, San Francisco County, different sales tax. And this is something that online retailers and other groups have fought over the years. First, it was there was a bill vetoed by Governor Davis, another bill vetoed by Governor Schwarzenegger, and the argument was the internet was too new. Why do we, hobble it with a tax or tax collection? Nobody's making that argument anymore. It's not. It's here to stay.
This was a bill by East Bay Assemblywoman Nancy Skinner. She said it's going to bring in lots of money. There's a lot of debate about the amount of money, but the Board of Equalization says, as much as $300 million. Now that gets chopped up into pieces, counties, state, municipalities. So it's hard to know what that's going to be and how that matters to the state that has an ongoing budget crisis, as far as I can tell. And then there's a federal effort that's happening in Washington. There's a federal bill that wouldn't require physical presence. So you would just you would just buy something, and even if the merchant doesn't have physical presence in the state, a state could compel that merchant to collect sales tax.
And we're not the only state with which Amazon has cut a deal and,
Nope.
and the law has been put into effect. Texas, Nevada.
Texas, Nevada, Pennsylvania. So there's about 7 states where the collection's happening for a variety of reasons. Washington State because Amazon's there, but and there's about another maybe 6 more where it's being enacted. So no, we're not the first. We are, of course, the 9th largest economy in the world, and the 10% of the U.S. population. So it's a huge market. And so what happens in California is really important. How it gets implemented is going to be watched in Washington. And one question I have is, does this put more pressure on the congressional leaders, or does it put less pressure on them to pass their own kind of national plan?
But with a deal like this in place, doesn't this sort of enable Amazon to now put a distribution center here in California without worrying about the tax implications, and thus offer faster delivery and give more competition to brick and mortar businesses?
That's a really good point. I mean, part of the deal were 2 distribution centers in San Bernardino and Patterson. And some people, critics of Amazon, have said they basically traded the sales tax benefit for the warehouse benefit, the faster delivery, those things that you really want, that people really, they basically made a decision, this is according to some, that we want fast more than we want to pay that, not pay that 9%, which, by the way, you always owed. So I think that, and you can see them doing that all around the country, putting down roots.
So from now on, if you're ordering, you'll be paying taxes, and I could not decide whether local retail on the ground businesses will benefit from this or not. We don't know. Or not benefit. Well, thank you very much. And you too, Josh, for being with us tonight. San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee was elected to office last November after having been appointed interim mayor in January when his predecessor, Gavin Newsom, was sworn in as lieutenant governor. A longtime city employee and former city administrator, he is the first Asian American mayor of San Francisco. While his style may be less flamboyant than some of his predecessors, there have been plenty of excitement during his first year in office. I spoke with Mayor Lee earlier. Welcome, Mayor Ed Lee. Good to have you on the program. Let's start on a high note. Okay, if you had the opportunity to name the thing that you are most proud of after becoming mayor, what would it be?
I've worked really hard on just trying to create an investor confidence in this city and really restore back the economic recovery. And it's so important for our cities across the country, including San Francisco, to work hard at our economics. And so when I was interim mayor last year, we did pension reform. That was extremely important. We had to really gain some leverage and control around that. I closed a $385 million budget deficit, found ourselves a great police chief, and then there was this little company called Twitter, 450 people at the time, that said, hey, if you don't help us out, we're going to have to leave the city. And by gosh, working with the Board of Supervisors, that was one of the most marvelous things we've done, because guess what's happened? Now we have over 304 technology companies who have felt the confidence in the city. They're moving in, they're creating jobs, and we're the 3rd lowest unemployment rate in the whole state of California because of technology and all the other wonderful things that are happening in the public and private sector.
Well, let's move to the intractable problems: homelessness, housing crisis, affordability of housing for some people. And though you've said you've got a handle on the budget, I mean, you came from being the city administrator, so at least you knew how things worked. Are these problems that are going to be solved in your lifetime, my lifetime?
Well, I certainly hope so, and I think we've got a good a record to achieve the foundation to make them more successful. Take, for example, housing. Yes, everybody's complaining about the affordability or the lack of housing. Well, we've got something on the ballot this year, Proposition C, Housing Trust Fund, creating an ability to have $50 million a year for the next 30 years. That will replace what redevelopment used to do for us in building affordable housing, but also in concert and in full collaboration with the Board of Supervisors, is having first responders and police officers and firefighters be able to partake in that housing trust fund by having a portion of it used for first-time home buyers and their down payment challenges.
Certainly, the Central Subway project is a very controversial one. There's somewhat hard feelings between those in North Beach and those in Chinatown. Getting to the need for it, first of all, I wish you'd speak to. How do you bring these communities together?
For me, it's been actually quite easy. You just point to the crowdedness of that 30 Stockton Street bus every single day and every afternoon. It's so filled that people can hardly get on. They have to wait 2 or 3 buses down the road. What does that say to us getting around the city? And then the second point I'd want to make for them is, where is our new housing residents going to live in the city? They're going to live in Hunters Point. They're going to live in Visitation Valley. We have that evidence. It's factual. People are buying and renting housing down there because of the overcrowded conditions that exist in all of our other parts of the city. So how do they get around the city? It's the Central Subway. It's our Muni system. And this extension will allow residents in that area to be able to visit all the way through Chinatown.
So how are you going to handle Proposition F? That's the proposition that will go before voters that eventually would require tearing down or disengaging the Hetch Hetchy water project.
Well, that's right. And the first thing we do, Belva, for this Proposition F is that we explain to the public what it really does. It will ask us to spend money to study how we drain Hetch Hetchy. And as ridiculous as that sounds, it's the truth. And that's not a good proposition. It's not a good use of money, not a good use of our whole system at the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. We've been spending billions of ratepayers' dollars to build up that system to make sure our water is safe, it's delivered well, not just to San Francisco, but to the whole Bay Area counties that depend upon that clean water. So it's a Trojan horse for those who have proposed this, and we're exposing it, and we believe we'll win this argument not only just with a small margin. Once we get the story out that it attempts to drain our Hetch Hetchy, I think the public will agree that this is not a good proposition.
We are a city of neighborhoods, and in one neighborhood, the Castro District, there's this problem of men who walk around in daylight hours naked. As a mayor, is that something, there's nothing that you could do about that, or do you consider that even a problem?
Well, obviously, if that affects kids that are going to school or times of the day where the exposure isn't appropriate, we should do something about that. That's not acceptable. At the same time, I've got to balance that off with people's First Amendment rights. This is a town where that's extremely valued, but there are conditions and terms in which that could be permitted yet unpermitted when our kids are exposed. So we're gonna be dealing with that.
What are you going to do about Ross Mirkarine?
The charter required the mayor to take a look at all the facts. What Mr. Mirkarimi, as the elected sheriff, pled to in court, and he did plead to committing a degree of violence, domestic violence, and he pleaded to false imprisonment. I had to make a decision as to whether that amounted to official misconduct, which I did conclude it did, and I believe that the office of the sheriff should not tolerate that kind of behavior, and therefore made the recommendation he be suspended, and he was. The Ethics Commission supported my finding in a 4-to-1 vote, and they are about to proceed on making that recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, and they'll have 30 days to act on that.
Well, it was a fast lope through many problems, but we thank you so much, Mayor Ed Lee, for being on the program.
It's my pleasure to be on the show with you, Belva. Thank you very much for your 3 decades of great work.
Well, this has been a turbulent week with fatal attacks on the U.S. consulate in Libya and continued anti-American protests worldwide, providing a stark reminder of tangled relationships between the West and much of the Muslim world. Among the countries where protests took to the street was Afghanistan, which the U.S. invaded shortly after 9/11. Hundreds of thousands of Afghan refugees have fled their war-torn country, seeking a new life in America. As Scott Schaefer discovered, there is a Bay Area community that has become a home away from home for a growing number of Afghans.
Thousands of tourists visit the city by the bay each year, but for artist Shakur Kushrawi, the sights and sounds of San Francisco provoke not only a sense of wonder, but more than a little culture shock.
Yeah, I can relate to that because coming from Afghanistan, look at San Francisco. What a difference. The colors, people, the way they dress.
Shakur and his brother Jelani are refugees from Afghanistan. Shakur is a recent transplant, fleeing the ongoing violence in his home city of Kabul. Wandering the city, finding inspiration for his paintings is a newfound pleasure.
He says, I think it's a place to just relax and think about the art, and instead of worrying about the war, from which angle you will be shot. Most of Afghanistan's homes are built from mud, and when you're coming here, see all the concrete, all the high-rise. I enjoyed looking at the bright colors, and when I look back what type of color you're using, this is very exciting.
Though they visit San Francisco often, like thousands of other Afghan refugees, Shakur and Jelani live far from the hustle and bustle of city life.
Northern California is home to the largest population of Afghans in the United States. Many of them have settled here in Fremont. Over the past 3 decades, the area known as Little Kabul has become a kind of cultural haven for Afghans looking for a sense of community and the familiar flavors of home.
Fremont Boulevard, which is known as Little Kabul or Centerville, I would say it was an illusion created by journalists. So there's actually not as many restaurants or as many community centers as you would see in Chinatown, for example. However, it still gives a sense of home to a lot of Afghans.
Through her work with the Afghan Coalition's Mental Health Project, Mishkan Darby has eased the transition for several generations of Afghan refugees in the Bay Area. They've come to the United States in waves, starting with the 1979 Soviet invasion.
Kabul was a very robust city when the first wave of immigrants came to the United States. They used to mention that they had a lot of good times going to restaurants and movie theaters, and that's what Little Kabul provides on a smaller scale here to the Bay Area community.
There are shops, there's a bakery store. There are also masjids built here, so people, they do praying.
Let me ask you about this one right here.
Shakur and Jelani share a tiny apartment just a few blocks from the Little Kabul Strip. The balcony doubles as Shakur's art studio. Crippled by a bad fall and a leg that never fully healed, since the age of 7, Shakur has done all of his painting on the floor. Despite his disability and limited resources, over the years he's created more than 2,000 works of art. Portraits and landscapes he used to sell to American servicemen in Kabul reflected everyday life in Afghanistan.
What about this painting here? It looks like it's 3 people, 3 kids maybe.
As you know, refugees are those when they leaving their homes and they're forced to get out, and they're trying to find a shelter elsewhere, and this is exactly what it is.
The art that Shakur produces comes from his heart. It's from what he's seen. I remember Shakur telling me stories where there was literally bombs going off outside, and they were sitting in the basement. And at the candlelight, he would sit and make sure that he did his art, because that would help block out everything that was going on around him.
Since his escape from the war, Shakur's palette and subject matter have changed to reflect his new surroundings.
The one thing that a lot of the Afghan refugees have here, no matter what wave they came in, is that they are very hopeful. And they tell their stories through a common language, and that is art.
Like Shakur, Humayun Sahi fled Afghanistan in order to pursue his passion.
In Afghanistan, music was banned during the Taliban.
Since he was 10 years old, Humayun has played the rabab, a 2,000-year-old double-chambered lute known as the national instrument of Afghanistan.
Humayun Sahi is renowned worldwide. He has played in Carnegie Hall. He uses a lot of classical music incorporated with fusion and new music. He also sings with other musicians like Ustad Farida Mawash. Ustad Mawash is one of very few women who have been able to establish the title of Ustad. That is considered a master of music in our community. And the fact that she was able to overcome the stigmas that musicians have, especially for a woman, it's not a career path that you want to go down, is amazing.
Ustad Mawash, Homayun, and his brother Pervez are rehearsing for an upcoming tour. Along with the other members of Voices of Afghanistan, they'll present a wide range of music reflecting the diverse regions of their homeland.
In this song, there is a word cha-cha-cha.
چچچه آهنگ چچچه اروپایی است. تو خطاب میکنه تو میگه که او بچه ما امروز تو چچچه نمیرقصم ما میخوایم امروز تو با آهنگای وطن خود برقصم ساز لوگرش خوب است رقص و هنرش.
I think to me music is coming from heart and touching another heart, you know.
I believe strongly from my experience working with this community that the one thing that can bring them back and give them some hope and help them overcome the traumas that they've experienced is a connection through their art and the culture and the history that is rich with folklore and fables and music.
And with that report, that is all for tonight. Visit kqed.org/thisweek for past episodes and segments, to subscribe to our newsletter and our podcast, and to share your thoughts about the show and our stories. I'm Belva Davis. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Major funding for arts programming on This Week in Northern California is provided by Diane B. Wilsey. Additional funding comes from the George Frederick Jewett Foundation, Helen Sarah Steyer, and Gretchen Kimball.